Good to be here. I'll talk about briefly our resources and how we came into being and sort of what we're trying to achieve with this particular project. Firstly, I want to say I'm not a geologist. Secondly, I'm not a mining engineer. I don't come from the mining industry to start with. But what I have done over the last 10 years is learn a hell of a lot about mining, and I did this in a way, trial and error really. I was working in Western Australia for a garment company as the managing director, and the guy I was working for was named Warren McKinney, and he introduced me to Owen Hegarty, and it was about 1999, and I'd never invested in any ASX stocks ever, and I didn't really know anything about the ASX or trading stocks, but I met Owen at a function, and Owen was a very convincing man. You know, he told a good story, and so I thought, well, I'm going to tip a bit of money into this project of Owen's, and it was my first investment. It was in Oxiana was the company. Anyway, I bought the shares at about 20 cents, I think, and I sort of went back to work and forgot about this. And about a year later, I got a letter from from the board of Oxiana saying they'd had a takeover offer, and I think the takeover offer was like $2.10. And I thought, ooh, that's not a bad result. So that was my first foray into mining, and it's sort of been an interesting pathway ever since. So how I got into this was, I'd sold my business, which was a surfwear company called Aloha, and I sort of wasn't really doing anything much, and I was sort of semi-retired. And over the years of, trading shares from that first investment with Oxiana, I sort of read a lot of reports, of mining reports and gold reports, and I found it was a fascinating business, and probably one of the more fascinating businesses I've ever been involved in. But in doing that, I sort of wanted to learn. I had a great fascination for rocks. I'm not a geologist, but I do know a lot about geology now, and I certainly know a lot about the geological sciences. So I sort of set out to set this company up with the objective of trying to get a gold project of some scale and some substance. And I can tell you, when you're a junior explorer in Western Australia, that's not a very easy thing to do, because everyone's always trying to get hold of these projects, and it's very competitive. Anyway, I came across Bottle Creek in last year, and I heard about it at Diggers and Dealers, and I was immediately fascinated by the scale of this particular project, and certainly by the fact that it had sat dormant for about 30 years. And it was owned by a fairly reclusive prospector named Rodney Lehman. Anyway, I tracked Rodney down, and he was extremely reclusive, and a man of very few words. But he's a prospector, and he'd been approached about this project many times by a lot of people, and they all offered him corporate deals and shares and all this sort of stuff, and he was just a cash and gold guy. And no one really ever listened to him. So I listened to what he wanted, and he said, James, I want $5 million for this project, and I want a gold royalty, and I want you to pay for any rehabilitation. And, he gave me his data room, and I looked at it and I thought, well, it's a lot of money. But then, we delved deeper and deeper into the data, and we thought, well, it's actually not really a lot of money, because Bottle Creek was mined in the 80s by a company called North. And it was discovered as a geochemical discovery, in about 1983 by a company called Electrolytic Zinc. But in doing that, they discovered this project and they fast-tracked it. It's a supergene-enriched gold deposit. It's located about 85 k's west of Leonora and about 90 k's northwest of Menzies. And it's in the northern end of the Mount Ida gold belt. I'm not going to show you a bunch of slides of sections or, what's going on with what we've done in drilling, because you can always look at that on the internet and it's all there available for you to, review in detail. What I will do, I'll talk about the company and where we're at in terms of what our market capitalisation is and what an opportunity it is to buy this particular share, because you're all gold people, and the only reason you're at this conference is because you want to find something that's going to make you money. no doubt, as we all do, that I'd like to make some money out of it myself. So our resources, our projects, this is the key project that we're focusing on. This metric here, I'll deal with this first. There's a number there, $7 million our company's valued at on the exchange at the moment. Now, we're sitting on a project currently with about 210,000 ounces of gold and 650,000 ounces of silver. We started drilling this project in March this year. Since we commenced, we've drilled 15,000 metres of RC and 1,100 metres of diamond. We've got an impending resource upgrade coming. But the beauty of the project was when we acquired the project from Rodney for the $5 million, we acquired an asset that had a huge amount of sunk capital in it. We had 90,000 metres of historical drilling. Bottle Creek itself is 11 kilometres long in terms of strike length, and it's very, very simple geology. It's an oxide supergene enriched gold deposit. It was mined in 1987 and 1988 by North, and they mined 100,000 ounces out of the project in 18 months. It was processed in a very basic gold plant, CIP, probably the cheapest mud factory in the goldfields. It was mined at 3.5 grams a tonne in the oxide zone, and it had a 92% recovery. Unfortunately for North, 87, 88, gold was $400 an ounce, and it retreated to, I think, $290 over that year. So they didn't make any money out of the project, and North was acquired by Rio. Rio acquired the project to get hold of their iron ore assets, and they shut the project down. What they did then was spent 7 or 8 years rehabilitating this project in entirety. This is the only gold mine in WA that's been handed back to the government, fully rehabilitated with no environmental liability. Now, our prospector, Rodney, he got hold of it when it was handed back to the government. He sat on this for 20 years. There hasn't been a drill hole put in Bottle Creek for 30 years. We're the first company to drill it. So we're in a jurisdiction. This is just some images of what we've been doing. That's the Bogues pit. We've got sunk capital here. We've got an airstrip built by Rio, probably about $3 or $4 million. It's an RFDS airstrip. We've got established bore fields, both for mining and for potable water for the camp. We've got established tailings dams. We've got permits for 3.5 million tonnes of tailings. And all-weather roads. We've drilled in rain, and it's very easily accessible, and it's fantastic country. And as I said, it's very, very simple geology. It's an ultramafic with shale beds and a felsic intrusive. Every time you hit the shale, you hit the supergene gold. And if you want to look at our results and see the assays, it's certainly available on the website. And I can see there's Tony Licantro over there. He's a supporter of the company. Who has the best gold results this year in WA, Tony? But you can certainly have a look at those on the internet. So what we're doing is we're looking at a pathway to development. We're going to fast track the project. It won't move. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to flip over this slide. That's just a location where we are. It'll give you some indication of where it is. It's currently we're sitting on a resource of, as I said, 210,000 ounces. We've just drilled an additional 7,000 metres of RC. The drill rig's still on site at the moment, and we expect that resource upgrade in the coming months. What we will do is we're looking at other stranded assets. When we picked up this project, we discovered there's some other assets quite close by which we classify as stranded. This particular one at Mount Ida is owned by Eastern Goldfields. Well, that's an image of Eastern Goldfields tenements. As you're all aware, Eastern Goldfields have had some issues over the last 6 months. We think this asset may become available over time, and we're certainly going to bid for it from that company. Bidding for this particular asset, and with our current drilling, we have a fairly clear line of sight to 500,000 ounces as a project. also bearing in mind, this is a very, very straightforward project. It's a shallow open pit gold project in the oxide. It's currently at 2.2 grams a tonne, and based on comparable metrics with other producers, we think it'll be fairly profitable as it goes into production. We are going to fast track the project to the production stage, metallurgy, all the feasibility studies we have from the previous explorer. So in terms of us progressing this fairly quickly, we have significant cost benefits in not having to go down that pathway of feasibility. We'll just change the metrics on the already existing feasibility studies. So here's what we've done. We've drilled half the Emu, which is an ore zone 4 or 5 k's from the original Bottle Creek VB pits where they mined. It's 5 k's up strike. And Bottle Creek, in terms of the mineralised zones, 11 kilometres long. In our drilling programs to date, we've drilled 900 metres and produced 110,000 ounces of gold and 658,000 ounces of silver. The cost of discovery is about $9.80 per ounce. The fascinating thing with this is we pulled nearly every 100 metres of ground cover we drilled, we pulled in 12,000 ounces of gold. When we got the drill data from the prospector, it was all in paper. It was done in 1980s. So we had to digitise all this. So it took 6 months to bring all the data into Micromine. But in doing that, what we did is we had a very clear understanding of where everything lies, and we also have a very clear understanding of how much gold and silver is in this system. So unfortunately, with ASX and JORC Mineral Code rules, we couldn't really say anything about that particular resource, even though we knew it was there. We had to go and validate it, which is sort of what we've been doing. So we do know that we've got a very clear line of sight to the 500,000 ounce mark, which we've considered to be a critical point where we could look at putting a small processing plant in the area. We also see Bottle Creek as being an opportunity for a processing plant in the northern end of the Mount Ida Gold Belt. There's no plant in this area. The closest plant's Davyhurst, and the other close plant is St Barbara's plant at Gwalior, at Leonora. But none of these plants will process any toll treating ore. So you've got a myriad of assets in this northern end of Mount Ida, on the Zuleika Shear, the Mount Ida Shear and the Ballard Fault, where there's a myriad of satellite ore bodies that no one can do anything with. So whoever puts a plant in here is going to pick up all these assets and the lion's share of these stranded assets. And we're already in discussion with several people about adding additional assets into the company portfolio. So this is an idea of Bottle Creek. We had a $5 million payment to the vendor for the project that was due in December. Part of the conditions precedent of this asset, we had to fulfil certain obligations. One was drilling X amount of metres. We had to produce a JORC compliant resource within a time frame. We've met all those conditions and we've exercised the option to acquire this asset. The vendor, knowing that it's a difficult market to raise capital at this particular time, has offered us extremely generous commercial terms to settle the asset in the purchase stage. 1.875 million in December and the balance in December 2019, which will give us more than enough time to develop the asset into a 500,000 ounce project. And we estimate that we'll be re-rated then. I'm sort of running out of time. The two things I want you to take away from this is currently ALT is a $7 million market cap, and we have a $50 million asset base. So we think that there's some opportunity there for investors to make some money out of our company. So thank you for having me, and thanks, Kerry, for putting on a great show.